Shooting games, more specifically first-person shooters, because there are a plethora, yes a plethora, of different types. Vehicle shooters, first-person shooters, third-person shooters, looter shooters, run and guns, light gun shooters, rail shooters, shooting gallery games, scrolling shooters, top-down shooters, twin-stick shooters, you get the idea. Also, you could argue these games go back as far as the early 70s, but I want to focus on when these games really started to take shape as something we can recognise today. So, sorry Spasm and Maze Wars, you're not making the cut this time, guys. By the end of 1991, we'd more or less got the tech in place. Raycasting, texture mapping, and first-person advanced graphics engines. Once we had these, we could start to make something recognisable by today's standards, albeit much simpler and not quite as shiny.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Doom guy.
So you doing this first-person shooter thing?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of my thing.
Oh, for sure.
So, where do you need me?
Oh, no, not just yet, really. I'll give you a shout.
Okay, I'll just be over there playing with my BFG.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, so following the success of Castle Wolfenstein and beyond Castle Wolfenstein, Wolfenstein 3D was released back in 1992, when adding the word 3D to the title of a game made it sound like da bomb and hella cool, which were actual 90s slang. It was a massive hit, partly because it used a shareware publishing model, but mostly because it let you shoot lots and lots of Nazis. You played as William B.J. Blazkowicz, a US special spy of Polish descent whose mission was to destroy the Nazi regime, ultimately by killing a robotic form of Hitler himself. It would actually set the scene for a ton of mechanics that are common even now, like picking up different guns, collecting ammo, and finding health packs to restore your health bar. While the world was 3D, the enemies and other sprites in the game were actually 2D, drawn in several different angles to the player. This is sometimes referred to as 2.5D or billboarding, and it would be a few years yet before we'd get the chance to actually fight 3D enemies properly. Its success would lead to the development of oodles of other first-person shooters, most notably Doom, released a year later in 1993.
Did you say?
Yeah.
So, this bit's about me then?
Yeah.
Cool. Let me get my popcorn.
For the most part, Doom took what Wolfenstein had done and refined it. Better level designs, because it wasn't limited by building things on a grid, height variations with platforms and stairs, making the fights more dynamic. The game was higher resolution, and the textures were much improved as well. With its gory violence, dark humour, and hellish settings, it would mark the point in time when religious groups and censors would start to try and limit what game studios were allowed to make. They thought these games were turning the players evil. Heretic, released in 1994, would further improve on what Doom did. It allowed for vertical as well as horizontal aiming, further testing players' skills in fights, and it really upped the gore by including gibs, also known as the bloody body chunks that fly around the screen when you kill a baddie.
Ooh, I like it.
I thought you might. It also added an inventory system to allow for storage and selection of items. What followed were a series of titles that all helped to advance the genre forward in different ways. Star Wars Dark Forces would introduce crouching and jumping, Rise of the Triads would include persistent bullet holes, and allow you to shatter glass. Little known studio Bungie would use their Marathon series to include deeper story elements and narrative in first-person shooters. It also pioneered different multiplayer modes like Capture the Flag and King of the Hill, and experimented with free look, dual wielding and dual function weaponry. So between 1992 and 1996 we've kind of got this thing going where every subsequent game was evolved from the games that had come before it. It's why it can sometimes be difficult to say that one game or that other one game invented a particular new gameplay element, because designers were trying out new things and different things all the time. The last great sprite-based shooter released in 1996 was Duke Nukem 3D. It was lauded for its humour around the stereotypical macho man and for its frantic, adrenaline-fueled gameplay and graphics. It was also heavily criticised for its excessive misogyny, an example of which was that the player was able to throw money at strippers while simultaneously mowing down the alien threat. The industry has maybe matured a little bit since then. Full 3D, however, was on the way. Quake was released by ID in 1996 and completely changed the landscape for gaming and also the hardware we used to play it.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Indeed. It was genre-defining, featuring fast-paced, gory gameplay with a completely 3D game environment and making use of real-time rendered polygonal models instead of sprites. Basically, the bad guys were now multi-dimensional. And not multi-dimensional in the Spider-Verse sense, but literally they had more dimensions. It helped to expand the growing video card market, and being focused on online gaming, it became the first FPS to develop player clans that would regularly compete against one another. This would inspire popular events such as QuakeCon, and essentially was the fledgling efforts of modern esports platforms. The other big hitter around this time was a little bit less expected. GoldenEye 007 was released in 1997 onto the N64, and even I can remember how many hours I sunk into this game as a kid. It was the first landmark shooter for consoles and showed that players were happy enough using a controller rather than just a mouse and keyboard. It included a plethora, yes a plethora, of new mechanics that would be considered standard by today, but at the time, boy were they cool. This included things like reloading, penalties for hitting innocents, sniper rifles with scopes, the ability to do headshots, stealth, position-dependent hit reaction animation, which basically means if you shot someone in the leg, they wouldn't act like they'd been hit in the chest. And a newly designed aiming system allowing players to shoot at precise spots on the screen. Now, as a Brit, I don't often use the term totes amaze, but GoldenEye was totes amaze. Or if you want to stick with the 90s slang, we can say it was da bomb. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, released in 1998, would popularise the tactical first-person shooter, even though games from as far back as 1987 could be described as earlier tactical shooters. It brought shooters back to reality, focusing on counter-terrorism and encouraging players to plan their attacks rather than just running and gunning into situations. The late 1990s would also start to see the love affair between shooters and World War II as a setting, with Medal of Honor releasing in 1999. Makes a lot of sense when you think about it, as it was probably the period in human history where the most guns were in use. Another biggie would release in 1998, which would again redefine the genre. But before I tell you what that is, pause the video and drop a comment with your guess, because it's probably one of the biggest games ever made. Ready? The day Gordon Freeman wheeled that cart into the doomed experiment, he didn't just change his world, but fundamentally changed the way we consider first-person shooters moving forward. It wasn't even a particularly anticipated release, but was a commercial success.
Okay, but why was it such a big deal?
Because it doubled down on the narrative elements, and as gamers we decided we wanted to care more about the things we were shooting and the people we were saving. It wasn't the first game to use NPCs, but it capitalised on the concept. It had no cutscenes, everything playing out from a first-person perspective, fully immersing the player in the action and story. The AI could be tough as boots, and was the first time a lot of us first realised what was meant by being flanked. To think about how influential Half-Life was, we've only to consider the feelings that are conjured up when you hear this. Where Half-Life was enriching our lives in the single-player department, Star Siege Tribes doubled down on the first-person shooter as a multiplayer experience, by allowing players to slaughter each other alongside 31 of their friends. It also brought a new toy to the mix in the form of jetpacks, which might seem like a small addition, but players really responded to being able to kill and hop around the battlefield.
A jetpack? I gotta get me one of those.
Afraid not, buddy. You'll just have to stick with the BFG. It was, however, the release of Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament, both in 1999, that would become a real milestone for multiplayer gaming. They both boasted incredible graphics, perfectly balanced their online modes, and doubled down on fast, engaging, and most importantly, fun combat. Their single-player offerings were, however, not much more than arcade-style add-ons, and were only really there to teach you how to play before going into multiplayer. This laser focus on multiplayer, especially for Unreal, was due to the amount of time the team spent improving the multiplayer code to make it faster and less laggy. It was around this time that publishers and developers, quite wrongly I might add, started to herald the death of the single-player game. At least we have none of that silly nonsense today. Player tastes had moved on a little from the mindless boomer shooters of yesteryear.
Hey!
No offence, Doom Guy, but the release of the mod Counter-Strike in 1999 with its counter-terrorism theme, copied from Rainbow Six, and its gameplay giving you only one life, was enormously successful, with its peak seeing as many as 90,000 players online at any one time. And with that, we waved goodbye to the 1990s. The big ball dropped in Times Square, and we waited anxiously to see if the Millennium Bug was going to wipe us all out overnight. Spoilers, the Millennium Bug didn't kill us all, and we woke into the 2000s bleary-eyed and ready for more awesome shootery goodness. We've still got oodles to talk about, Deus Ex, Halo, Call of Duty, Battlefield, just off the top of my head to name a few. But I think we're going to wrap up this video here because it's getting pretty long and I need to take the loo break. Smash that sub button so you can see when I post the next stuff, and I will see you soon. I've been Tack, and you've been just marvellous.